It sounds simple. But it isn't easy. We spend the vast majority of our waking lives locked in a suffocating psychological chess match with the world around us, calculating the moves of others, agonizing over their silence, and burning through our vital life force in a desperate bid to control the uncontrollable. Imagine a woman standing in the center of a crowded room, her nervous system vibrating at a frequency of pure anxiety because 3 people she considers friends are whispering in a corner and did not invite her to join them. She is the archetype of the controlling captive, a prisoner of her own expectations, convinced that if she can just find the right words, the right gesture, or the right amount of social pressure, she can force the world to align with her desire for inclusion. But the sensational truth revealed in this philosophy is that her struggle is the very bars of her cage. The moment she attempts to manipulate the reality of their exclusion is the moment she loses her sovereignty. The let them theory arrives not as a gentle suggestion, but as a radical, psychological guillotine that severs the tether between our inner peace and the external choices of others. It is the realization that when you allow people to be exactly who they are, even if that means they are being rude, distant, or exclusionary, you are not losing. You are finally, for the first time in your life, gathering the data required to see the truth. The narrative of our daily existence is often a wearying saga of the fixer, a character who believes that love and care are synonymous with intervention. Think of a father watching his adult son make a series of disastrous financial decisions, or a wife trying to curate the emotional health of a husband who refuses to go to therapy. These characters are fueled by a noble but toxic delusion, that they are responsible for the outcomes of lives that are not their own. They believe that if they let them fail, they are failing as protectors. However, the archetypal shift here is from the protector to the observer. By refusing to let others experience the natural consequences of their own character, the fixer inadvertently stunts the growth of those they claim to love while simultaneously hollowing out their own spirit. The theory posits a sensational reversal of traditional morality, that the most loving thing a person can do is to step out of the way. When you let them make the mistake, you are honoring their journey as a sovereign being. You are acknowledging that their soul requires the friction of reality to evolve, and your interference is merely a stay of execution that costs you your own sanity. Consider the psychological weight of the unanswered message. In the modern era, our digital tethers have turned us into frantic seekers of validation. A woman sends a vulnerable text to a partner and receives nothing but silence for hours. Her mind becomes a laboratory of torture, concocting scenarios of betrayal, rehearsing arguments, and spiraling into a pit of self-doubt. She is the anxious petitioner, waiting for a judge to grant her the right to feel okay. But the let them theory intervenes with a brutal, liberating simplicity. Let them not text back. This is not an act of passivity, it is an act of supreme emotional economy. By saying let them, she reclaims the currency of her attention. She realizes that their silence is not a reflection of her worth, but a vivid, unvarnished portrait of their current priority. The lesson here is the gift of information. When we stop trying to coerce people into behaving the way we want, we finally get to see how they behave when left to their own devices. This information is the most valuable asset a human being can possess, for it allows us to make decisions based on reality rather than the exhausting fantasies of what we hope people will become. This internal revolution moves into the territory of the professional martyr, the worker who believes that their value is determined by the recognition of a superior or the approval of a peer. They labor under the sun of social expectation, constantly adjusting their performance to avoid the shadow of disapproval. When a promotion goes to a less deserving colleague or a project is criticized, the martyr collapses, feeling that the universe has committed a grave injustice. The narrative shift required here is the move toward intrinsic sovereignty. To let them misunderstand you, to let them underestimate you, or to let them be wrong about you, is to build a fortress around your own identity. It is the sensational realization that your value is not a floating currency that fluctuates based on the opinions of the marketplace. If you know who you are and what you have contributed, then the failure of others to perceive it is a them problem, not a you problem. By letting them be wrong, you conserve the energy that most people waste on futile explanations and defensive posturing. You become the silent king of your own domain. Realizing that the loudest person in the room is often the one with the least internal authority, the theory then explores the archetype of the social perfectionist, the one who lives in a constant state of audit. They are perpetually auditing the behavior of their social circle, looking for signs of disrespect or waning interest. They treat relationships like a balance sheet that must always be reconciled. But the let them approach suggests that the most powerful position one can take is that of the non-participant in drama. If a group of acquaintances goes to brunch without you, let them. If your siblings plan a holiday without consulting you, let them. The psychological intensity of this move lies in the vacuum it creates. When you stop reacting, when you stop trying to force your way into spaces where you aren't being invited, you create a space of total clarity. You are no longer performing for inclusion. You are standing in your own truth. And in that stillness, you can finally hear the voice of your own intuition. It tells you that the pain of exclusion is often just the ego's way of avoiding the reality that you have outgrown these people. Letting them is the catalyst for the great sorting, the process by which the soul discards what is superficial to make room for what is essential. The analysis of these stories reveals a deeper, more provocative truth. We are addicted to the illusion of control. We use our anxiety as a shield, believing that if we worry enough, we can prevent the world from hurting us. But worry is just a payment on a debt that may never come due. The let them theory is the ultimate debt forgiveness program for the spirit. It teaches us that the vast majority of our suffering is self-inflicted, born from the refusal to accept the autonomy of other people. We want the world to be a mirror of our own desires. But the world is a wild, unpredictable ocean. To let them is to stop trying to command the waves and to start learning how to sail. It is the realization that you are only responsible for the person steering the boat. The lesson is one of radical acceptance, not a resigned, defeated acceptance, but a powerful, choosing acceptance. You choose to let the world be as it is so that you can be as you are. As the narrative flows deeper into the psyche, we encounter the giver who feels resentment because their generosity is not reciprocated. They give with a hook attached, a hidden expectation that their kindness will buy them loyalty or affection. When the recipient fails to provide the expected return, the giver becomes the victimized creditor, bitter and exhausted. The let them theory cuts through this dynamic by demanding pure action. If you give because it is who you are, not because of what you want. Let them be ungrateful. Let them forget to say thank you. By letting them be as they are, you are forced to confront the truth of your own motivations. If their ingratitude hurts you, it means your gift was actually a transaction. By letting them be ungrateful, you free yourself from the marketplace of approval and return to the sanctuary of self-expression. You do things because they are right for you, not because they will elicit a specific response from others. This is the birth of the authentic self, the part of the psyche that is no longer for sale. The transformation shifts into the harrowing territory of the ghost of potential, a psychological state where an individual falls in love not with who a person is, but with who they could be. This is perhaps the most dangerous archetype of all, the alchemist of others. You see a partner's hidden talents, a friend's dormant ambition, or a sibling's suppressed kindness, and you dedicate your life to mining that gold. But the sensational reality is that you are essentially holding their current self hostage in favor of a version that does not exist. The let them theory acts as a brutal awakening from this trance. Let them be unmotivated. Let them be mediocre. Let them be exactly as stagnant as they choose to be. This isn't coldness, it is a radical respect for their free will. When you stop trying to unlock people, the energy you are projecting outward collapses back into your own life. You realize that the potential you were so desperate to see in them was actually a projection of the greatness you were too afraid to pursue for yourself. The lesson here is the law of mirroring. We try to fix others to avoid the terrifying work of fixing ourselves. By letting them be their current, messy selves, you are forced to look in the mirror and ask, who am I when I'm not someone else's project? The narrative flow now enters the Colosseum of reputation, where we witness the agonizing struggle of the perceived self. Most people are walking around with a mental avatar, a version of themselves they want the world to see, and they spend every waking moment defending this avatar from the arrows of misinterpretation. When someone spreads a rumor, misunderstands your intentions, or dislikes you for a reason that feels unfair, the natural instinct is to rush into the arena and fight. You want to explain, to clarify, to fix the story. But the sensational wisdom of this philosophy is that the arena is a trap. The more you defend your reputation, the more you belong to the people who are attacking it. Let them think you are the villain. Let them believe the lie. Let them misinterpret your silence as guilt. The moment you let them be wrong about you, you achieve a level of psychological power that is almost supernatural. You are no longer a participant in their drama, you are the architect of your own peace. You realize that your character is who you are, while your reputation is merely the shadow that others see, and you cannot control the shape of a shadow on a crooked wall. As the psyche matures under this theory, it encounters the archetype of the giver of unsolicited light. This is the person who feels a moral obligation to point out the flaws in others' logic, to correct their mistakes, or to guide them toward a better path. They believe they are being helpful, but they are actually engaging in a subtle form of ego dominance. The theory challenges this by introducing the sacred silence. Let them be wrong. Let them make the inefficient choice. Let them believe the nonsense. By practicing this, you preserve your internal battery. You recognize that most people are not looking for the truth, they are looking for validation of their current state. By letting them stay where they are, you avoid the friction of futility. You learn that the greatest teacher is not your advice, but their own experience. This segment analyzes the sovereignty of the path, teaching that every individual has a right to their own delusions until they are ready to shed them. Your only duty is to be a lighthouse, not a tugboat. A lighthouse doesn't run all over the ocean looking for boats to save, it just stands there and shines. The let them theory then scales upward to address the anxiety of the global soul. Today, more than ever, we are bombarded by the choices, opinions, and lifestyles of 8 billion people through the glowing rectangles in our pockets. We feel a constant, low-grade pressure to have an opinion on everything, to let them know where we stand, and to react to every shift in the cultural wind. This is the archetype of the distributed ego, where our sense of self is spread so thin across the digital landscape that we feel transparent and exhausted. The sensational remedy is a digital let them. Let them argue. Let them cancel. Let them trend. By retreating from the marketplace of reaction, you perform an act of psychological sequestration. You pull your spirit back into your physical body, into your immediate environment, and into the tasks that actually require your hands. You realize that the world will continue to spin regardless of your outrage. The lesson is selective engagement, the understanding that your peace is a finite resource that must be guarded with the ferocity of a dragon guarding gold. The story of the let them practitioner eventually reaches the threshold of the inner child. Deep within the psyche, the child is still crying out for the let them to become love them. We want to force our parents to finally see us, our exes to finally regret losing us, and our bullies to finally apologize. We are waiting for an external correction to heal an internal wound. But the let them theory provides the most potent medicine by refusing the external correction entirely. Let them never apologize. Let them never realize what they lost. Let them go to their graves never understanding your worth. This is the ultimate detachment. It is the moment you realize that your healing is not a transaction that requires their participation. If you need them to understand in order for you to be whole, they still own you. But if you can let them be the person who never got it, you are finally, truly free. You are no longer a victim of the unsaid, but a creator of the self-sufficient. This is the sensational climax of the philosophy, the realization that your enoughness is a self-generated frequency that does not require an external antenna. We must also analyze the shadow of the theory. Critics might argue that let them is a path to apathy or a justification for being a doormat. But the archetypal reality is exactly the opposite. Let them is the precursor to the final boundary. When you let them be their true, toxic selves, you are not saying that their behavior is okay, you are saying that their behavior is their reality. Once you have the clear, unvarnished truth of who they are, because you stop trying to change them, you can then make the sovereign choice to remove yourself from their orbit. You don't leave in a fit of rage or a cloud of explanation. You leave with the quiet, devastating efficiency of someone who has seen the truth. You let them stay exactly as they are. But you no longer let them stay in your life. This is the difference between reaction and response. Reaction is a slave to the stimulus, response is the master of the outcome. The narrative momentum builds toward the integration of the observer. You begin to see your life as a grand experiment in non-attachment. You watch your own impulses to control, to fix, and to manage. And you meet each one with the three-word mantra. You feel the itch to correct a coworker, let them. You feel the urges to explain your choices to a critical neighbor, let them. You feel the panic of a partner's bad mood, let them. Each time you do this, a layer of the false self falls away. You are no longer a social shapeshifter trying to fit into the molds created by others. You are becoming a solid, centered entity. The sensational power of this state is that people actually begin to gravitate toward you. Your let them energy creates a vacuum of non-judgment that is incredibly rare and magnetic. Because you are not trying to control them. They feel safe to be themselves. And ironically, they often begin to change on their own. But even if they don't, you are no longer invested in the result. You have achieved psychological buoyancy. The final movement of the spirit under this philosophy enters the sanctuary of the sovereign ego. A state of being where the noise of the world becomes a distant murmur. Unable to penetrate the thick glass of your new awareness. We are overlooking the most important thing. The let them theory is not about them at all. It is a profound, alchemical transmutation of your own relationship with time. When you stop trying to manage the behaviors of others, you reclaim the thousands of hours you previously spent in the mental courtroom, litigating past slights and rehearsing future confrontations. This reclaimed time is the gold of the psyche. It is the raw material you need to build the life you were meant to live before you became everyone else's emotional concierge. You realize that your life has been a series of delayed arrivals because you were too busy trying to fix the bridge for everyone else. Now, you simply walk across. The narrative of the transformed soul reaches its climax in the realization of emotional autonomy. Imagine the sensation of standing in a storm and not getting wet. This is what it feels like to truly embody let them. When a friend flakes on a commitment, the old you would have felt a sting of rejection, a smallness that demanded an apology to feel big again. The new you simply observes the flakiness as a data point. Let them be unreliable. This observation doesn't make you bitter, it makes you clear. You are no longer gambling your happiness on the consistency of fallible human beings. You have moved your value center from the shifting sands of external approval to the bedrock of internal conviction. The sensational truth is that you are finally unfuckwithable. Not because you are cold or hardened, but because you are no longer a hostage to the outcome. You do your part. You show up with integrity. And then you let them do whatever it is they are going to do. This brings us to the ultimate meaning of the book and the philosophy. The let them theory is the path to radical self-possession. Its core message is that your suffering is almost entirely a byproduct of your refusal to accept the reality of other people's autonomy. We suffer because we want the world to be different than it is. We heal when we realize that the world has every right to be exactly what it is. And we have every right to decide how much of it we will allow into our inner sanctum. It is a philosophy of selective participation. It teaches that you are the captain of your own ship, but you are not the master of the sea. By letting the sea be the sea, you can finally focus on the steering. The transformation is complete when you realize that let them is the highest form of self-love. It is the act of giving yourself permission to stop carrying the world on your shoulders. It is the recognition that you were never meant to be a sculptor of other people's souls, but the architect of your own peace. You are reborn into a world where you are no longer waiting for anyone to change, to apologize, or to see you. You see yourself. And that is finally enough. The search for external validation is over. And in its place is a quiet, indestructible sense of home. The only person you have ever truly had the power to change is currently reading this sentence.